layers and layers and layers of information are coming out, not just because objects are being examined in detail, but also because new technologies can be applied to them.
What if the most famous mask in history was hiding a name we were never meant to see? For over 3,000 years, Tutankhamun's golden mask has symbolized ancient Egypt. It has been studied, scanned, and scrutinized more than almost any artifact on Earth. But according to recent claims, a new quantum imaging scan may have revealed something earlier technologies missed, raising questions that could upend long-held assumptions in Egyptology. Stay with us, because the implications of this scan are staggering. The icon that captivated the world. Let's go back to November 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter stands in the Valley of the Kings, peering through a small hole he just chiseled into a sealed chamber. His candle flickers in the darkness. When asked what he sees, Carter whispers words that would echo through history. Yes, wonderful things. Inside that tomb lay treasures beyond imagination: golden chariots, jeweled thrones, and nested coffins that held one object destined to become the most recognizable artifact on Earth. The golden death mask of King Tutankhamun weighs 22 pounds of solid gold. That's heavier than a bowling ball, folks. The ancient Egyptians inlaid it with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and obsidian. The eyes seem to follow you across the room, which is honestly pretty unsettling when you think about it. To the ancient Egyptians, gold wasn't just valuable, it was the literal flesh of the gods. This mask served as sacred technology, designed to help the pharaoh's soul recognize its own body in the afterlife. On the back of the mask, craftsmen carved a spell from the Book of the Dead. Without this mask, Egyptian priests believed the king's spirit would wander lost through eternity. For almost a century, the world accepted this mask as the ultimate masterpiece of ancient Egyptian art. Flawless, perfect, made specifically for the teenage pharaoh who died at just 19 years old. But here's where our story takes a turn. Almost immediately after the discovery, experts started noticing things that didn't quite add up. The crazy part? These clues were never hidden. They were staring everyone in the face the entire time. Experts just didn't have the right questions to ask or the technology to prove what they suspected. And if these clues were real, if the evidence was as strong as some researchers believed, it meant everything the public thought about this mask might be fundamentally wrong. The 70-day impossibility problem. Here's what makes absolutely no sense about King Tut's burial. The young pharaoh died suddenly, probably from an infection after breaking his leg during a chariot accident. Egyptian religious law was crystal clear and completely inflexible. A pharaoh had to be mummified and buried within exactly 70 days. Not 69 days, not 71 days, but precisely 70 days. This wasn't a suggestion, this was sacred law. Now think about what that deadline actually means in practical terms. The priests and craftsmen had 70 days to carve an entire royal tomb from solid limestone. They had 70 days to build 3 elaborate coffins that nest inside each other like Russian dolls. They needed 70 days to gather thousands of burial artifacts, each one carefully chosen and blessed. And they supposedly had 70 days to create a 22-pound solid gold mask with microscopic details, precious stone inlays, and hand-carved hieroglyphic spells from scratch, all for a death that nobody saw coming. But the tomb itself tells a different story. The burial chamber is tiny compared to other pharaohs' tombs. Some archaeologists describe it as embarrassingly small for a king. The wall paintings look rushed and unfinished in places, as if the artists literally dropped their brushes and ran out of time. The massive stone sarcophagus has chipped corners, suggesting panicked workers had to smash pieces off just to squeeze it through the doorway and into the cramped space. When researchers examined the other treasures in the tomb more carefully, they discovered something shocking. Many of the items weren't originally made for Tutankhamun at all. Statues with faces that looked nothing like him, jewelry designed for a woman's smaller frame, coffins with names that had been hastily scraped away and recarved with Tut's cartouche. The evidence pointed to one unavoidable conclusion. The priests were working with whatever they could find, grabbing items from other tombs and modifying them on the fly to meet that impossible 70-day deadline. The pierced ears mystery. Then experts took a closer look at the mask itself, really looked at it, and they noticed something that should have been impossible. The ears on the death mask are pierced. In ancient Egypt, that detail was a massive cultural problem. Only children and women wore earrings. An adult male pharaoh depicted with pierced ears on his sacred burial mask would violate everything ancient Egyptians believed about kingship, masculinity, and the afterlife. Some researchers also noticed the face itself looked slightly off. The features appeared too delicate, almost feminine, compared to other depictions of pharaohs. Even stranger, the gold on the face had a subtly different color than the rest of the headdress. There was a faint reddish tint that shouldn't exist if everything was cast from the same batch of gold at the same time. These weren't dramatic differences. You had to look carefully to spot them. But once you saw them, they couldn't be unseen. A theory began forming among certain Egyptologists. What if, when King Tut died unexpectedly, there simply wasn't enough time to create a proper death mask? What if the priests, racing against that sacred 70-day deadline with a tomb full of borrowed items, decided to do the same thing with the mask? What if they went to another tomb, grabbed an existing mask, altered it just enough to pass inspection, and stuck it on the boy king's mummy? The question that would haunt researchers for decades came down to this. If the mask wasn't originally made for Tutankhamun, whose face were they actually looking at? The answer seemed obvious once you started connecting the dots, and it pointed to one of the most powerful and mysterious women in Egyptian history. Enter Queen Nefertiti. Her name was Nefertiti, which translates to, "The beautiful one has come." You've probably seen her face before. There's that famous painted bust with the long, elegant neck and knowing smile that sits in the Neues Museum in Berlin. Nefertiti was King Tut's stepmother, married to the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten. Together, they launched a religious revolution that tried to force all of Egypt to worship a single sun god called the Aten. After Akhenaten died, something unprecedented happened. Some scholars believe Nefertiti seized the throne herself, ruling Egypt as pharaoh under a different name. Historical records from this period are frustratingly vague and contradictory, but evidence suggests she may have ruled as pharaoh before Tutankhamun took power. Then she disappeared, completely vanished from history. Her tomb has never been found. Her mummy has never been definitively identified. It's as if someone deliberately erased her from the historical record. Here's where the timeline becomes extremely interesting. If Nefertiti died before young Tutankhamun, she would have had her own burial preparations, including a golden death mask. If Tutankhamun then died suddenly just a few years into his reign with nothing properly prepared, the math suddenly makes perfect sense. The pierced ears make sense because Nefertiti was a woman. The delicate feminine features make sense because the face was originally sculpted to represent a female pharaoh. The rushed modifications and slightly different gold composition make sense because craftsmen were adapting an existing mask under extreme time pressure. But here's the problem with this theory. Proving it was impossible without damaging the mask. You'd need to look beneath the surface, examine how the gold was worked, detect evidence of alterations that happened over 3,000 years ago. Nobody in their right mind would authorize destructive testing on one of the most precious artifacts in human history. The Nefertiti theory remained exactly that, a theory, whispered about at academic conferences, published in niche journals, dismissed by establishment Egyptologists as unprovable speculation. Then, in 2014, someone accidentally broke the mask, and that disaster would eventually change everything. The epoxy scandal.
The beard was considered a divine attribute, indicating the pharaoh's godlike nature.
The story made international headlines and shocked the archaeological world. During routine cleaning at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a worker accidentally bumped into the display case. The long braided beard attached to the mask, a sacred symbol of divine kingship in ancient Egypt, snapped clean off and clattered to the floor. Museum staff panicked. Instead of calling specialized conservators and following proper protocols, they grabbed whatever adhesive they could find in the building. Industrial epoxy glue, the kind you'd use to fix a broken pipe or repair a car bumper. They globbed it onto the broken beard, shoved it back into place, and desperately hoped nobody would notice the mistake. Everyone noticed. The thick yellowing glue was visibly smeared across the golden chin of the most famous artifact in Egypt. The country's greatest treasure, which had survived intact for 33 centuries, had been damaged with hardware store adhesive.
Strong adhesive had been used, an artificial glue, and that was very difficult to remove.
The Egyptian government eventually brought in an international team of experts, led by German conservator Christian Ekman. His job was to properly repair the beard, remove the epoxy without causing further damage, and restore the mask to its original condition. But Ekman saw an opportunity. Before reattaching anything, he decided to conduct a comprehensive analysis using X-ray fluorescence technology. He would finally answer the Nefertiti question once and for all. His logic was solid. If the face had been cut from another mask and soldered onto this one, the XRF scan would reveal it. Different gold compositions from different sources would show distinct chemical signatures. Solder lines would be visible. Any kind of major alteration would leave traces that X-ray technology could detect. Ekman's team spent months carefully scanning every millimeter of the mask. When the results came back, they seemed definitive. The gold in the face matched the gold in the headdress. The hieroglyphs spelling Tutankhamun's name showed no obvious evidence of being carved over another name. The delicate glass inlays around the eyes were perfectly intact, and if anyone had used high heat to solder a new face on, that glass would have cracked immediately. Case closed? Not so fast. Christian Ekman's team declared the Nefertiti theory dead. The mask was 100% authentic to Tutankhamun, created specifically for him, with no evidence of the face being replaced. They removed the inappropriate epoxy using specialized tools and reattached the beard with beeswax, exactly as ancient Egyptians would have done. The mask went back on display. The history books stayed the same. Everyone moved on, except that not everyone accepted these conclusions. A small group of researchers pushed back hard, arguing that Ekman's technology had a critical blind spot. X-ray fluorescence is excellent at detecting density differences, cracks, and obvious solder joints. But what if the ancient craftsmen were far more skilled than anyone gave them credit for? What if they used gold from the exact same batch to plug the ear piercings, hammering it so perfectly that no seam remained visible? What if they didn't simply carve over Nefertiti's name, but instead hammered the original hieroglyphs completely flat before engraving new ones? What if they attached the replacement face so precisely that the joint was only a few atoms thick? X-rays would see absolutely nothing. To detect that kind of manipulation, you'd need entirely different technology, something that could read the thermal memory locked inside the atomic structure of the metal itself. This is where the rumors about quantum imaging technology enter the picture. Could cutting-edge quantum sensors detect alterations that conventional X-rays miss? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. Quantum imaging is a real and rapidly developing field of physics. It uses quantum properties of light, things like entanglement and superposition, to see details impossible with classical imaging techniques. What is quantum imaging and the alleged discoveries? Before diving deeper into the speculation around King Tut's mask, it helps to understand what quantum imaging actually is. Though it sounds like science fiction, it is a real field that uses the strange rules of quantum mechanics to see beyond the limits of traditional optics. Techniques like ghost imaging and quantum sensing can detect details smaller than light wavelengths, measure individual photons, and potentially reveal how materials were altered at an atomic level long ago. This is where rumor enters the story. Claims circulating online suggest that in late 2024, physicists were quietly allowed to scan the mask using advanced quantum imaging under the guise of a calibration test. According to these unverified accounts, the scan revealed unusual atomic disturbances in the cartouche bearing Tutankhamun's name, suggesting the gold there had been hammered, scraped, and reworked in ways not seen elsewhere on the mask. The rumors go even further. They allege quantum scans detected filled ear piercings, molecular heat signatures around the face indicating replacement, and faint atomic traces of erased hieroglyphs. Supposedly, software reconstructed the original inscription as Nefer-Neferuaten, the throne name linked to Nefertiti. None of this has been published or peer-reviewed, but the technical plausibility keeps the theory alive. Why this might not be true. Playing devil's advocate. The theory makes surprising sense even without quantum imaging. We know many items in Tutankhamun's tomb were repurposed, including modified coffins and jewelry sized for women. Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves has documented real, measurable details, pierced ears, differing gold composition, and clear signs of a rushed burial. Given the strict 70-day burial deadline and the tomb's unusually small size, creating a solid gold mask from scratch would have been extremely difficult. There is also the unresolved mystery of Nefertiti herself. One of Egypt's most powerful figures has no confirmed tomb or mummy, an extraordinary absence by royal standards. Reeves has suggested her burial equipment may have been reused, and possibly that her tomb lies hidden behind Tutankhamun's walls. Infrared thermography in 2015 detected temperature anomalies that could indicate sealed chambers. Even the cartouche on the mask shows surface irregularities, hinting at possible reworking, though this cannot be confirmed without invasive testing. Still, skepticism is essential. No peer-reviewed study confirms quantum imaging was used on the mask or revealed a hidden name. A 2015 X-ray fluorescence analysis by Christian Ekman found no evidence of altered inscriptions, and Zahi Hawass has firmly rejected the theory. noting that male pharaohs of the period wore earrings. Finally, critics question whether ancient craftsmen could alter a gold mask so perfectly that no clear trace remains after 3 millennia. The technology question. This brings us back to quantum imaging and whether such technology could actually reveal these hidden secrets. Quantum imaging is definitely real. Scientists use quantum entanglement and other quantum properties to achieve imaging feats impossible with classical methods. Ghost imaging can create pictures of objects hidden behind barriers. Quantum illumination can detect objects in extremely noisy environments. Subshot noise imaging reduces interference to reveal faint details. However, most quantum imaging applications focus on biological samples, microscopy, and detecting extremely small objects or faint signals. Using quantum imaging to analyze the atomic history of worked metal is theoretically possible but represents cutting-edge research that hasn't been widely applied to archaeology yet. Could specialized quantum sensors detect the thermal memory of gold that was hammered 3,300 years ago? Maybe. But we have no confirmed examples of this technology being successfully used for that purpose. The rumors about scientists from the Max Planck Institute or other research centers scanning the mask are unverified. No press releases, no published papers, no official statements from Egyptian authorities or academic institutions confirm that these scans occurred. This doesn't mean they didn't happen. Sometimes preliminary research occurs quietly before public announcement, but it does mean we should treat these claims with appropriate caution until evidence emerges. What we can say definitively is that if quantum imaging technology advanced enough to detect ancient metal working techniques was used on the mask, and if it revealed evidence of modification, that would be absolutely groundbreaking. It would revolutionize our understanding not just of Tutankhamun's burial, but of ancient Egyptian metalworking capabilities, royal succession during the Amarna period, and the mysterious fate of Queen Nefertiti. What we actually know for certain. Let's separate confirmed facts from speculation. Here's what we know without question. King Tutankhamun died suddenly at approximately 19 years old. His tomb is unusually small for a pharaoh. Many items in the tomb were originally made for other people and modified for his use. The death mask has pierced ears, which is unusual for an adult male pharaoh. The gold composition of the face differs slightly from the headdress. Christian Ekman's X-ray fluorescence analysis in 2015 found no evidence of major structural modifications. We know Queen Nefertiti was one of the most powerful women in ancient Egypt. She may have ruled as pharaoh under the name Nefer-Neferuaten. Her tomb and mummy have never been definitively identified. We know Nicholas Reeves and other respected Egyptologists believe there's credible evidence that the mask was originally made for a female pharaoh, most likely Nefertiti. We know infrared scans of Tutankhamun's tomb walls detected temperature anomalies that could indicate hidden chambers, though subsequent radar surveys have produced conflicting results. We know quantum imaging is a real technology with potential archaeological applications. We know the Egyptian government and international research teams continue studying Tutankhamun's tomb and artifacts using increasingly sophisticated technology. What we don't know for certain is whether quantum imaging has been used on the mask, and if so, what it revealed. We're waiting for official publications and peer-reviewed research to confirm or debunk these fascinating rumors. King Tutankhamun's golden death mask remains one of archaeology's most debated artifacts. Evidence suggesting it once belonged to Queen Nefertiti includes pierced ears, altered features, differing gold, and a rushed burial. Claims that quantum imaging confirm this remain unproven. Still, the mask holds secrets, reminding us that ancient craftsmanship can hide truths until new questions, tools, and discoveries reveal them. What do you think? Is the mask really Nefertiti's stolen golden face? Or is this just wishful thinking from researchers who want to solve an ancient mystery? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.